Once you go wild, you don't go back. It appears that this is the case for the franchise after 189 Game of the Year awards won by Breath of the Wild. But on the path to glory, many ideas were brought up and some just didn't make the cut. Yes, Zelda's hair isn't the only thing that has been cut. So in this two-part collaboration with Zeltik, we will focus on cut content from Breath of the Wild. But first, make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to our channels if you haven't already.
But why go over cut content? Well, we all know what happened between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask and Super Mario Galaxy and Galaxy 2. Unused and previously scrapped ideas were brought back and implemented in the direct sequels. In other words, let's get straight into it. Then afterwards, head over to check out my 5 choices of cut content which could make its way into Breath of the Wild 2.
Ganondorf on a floating mountain.
Our first selection is none other than Ganondorf on this floating mountain, /guardian /dungeon /divine beast. Why? Since it for one looks rather peculiar and two was actually shown at the 2017 Game Developers Conference and surprised everyone in the audience. Did Nintendo seriously consider bringing Ganondorf back for Breath of the Wild even after his presumed deaths in the adult and child timelines? As we know now, yes, but not in the way we would expect him. Not as a strong leader who is once again after Hyrule, but rather as a mummified, starved and dreadful prisoner of what looks like the mysterious Zonai tribe. And yes, we'll soon get back to them. But we have to wonder, what if Ganondorf really made his comeback? That is to say, right after Hyrule Castle, have another mountain dungeon, or if you prefer, Divine Beast, which you would have to conquer and finally face Ganondorf on the top in a decisive duel. This objectively could be the most unique confrontation in the entire series. Until 2019, it looked like this was just another scrapped idea that was sacrificed for the sake of Calamity Ganon wreaking havoc on Hyrule, which could also explain why Satoru Takizawa skipped so quickly through this idea, without uttering a single comment. He literally gave no comment during the Game Developers Conference Zelda keynote. Weird. In fact, this piece of concept art has not even resurfaced since, not even in Masterwork / creating a champion. Instead, the concept art of Ganondorf on the mountain Divine Beast was most likely a hint to something greater, though altered, or if you prefer, refined. As Ganondorf is, as we've already established in Breath of the Wild 2. But what about the floating mountain? It appears it's just been cut altogether, or just like Ganondorf, it could have been altered. Say the levitating mountain was turned into the rising Hyrule Castle we see at the end of Breath of the Wild 2's reveal trailer. So perhaps our hopes for a final battle against Ganondorf on top of a mountain will turn into reality in the sequel, only with Hyrule Castle placed on top of that mountain. Or similar to our idea a few months back, a combination of a dungeon and a Divine Beast, where you first need to clear the dungeon to reach the Divine Beast at the end of said dungeon, then solve a few simple puzzles in the beast and then face the boss. That would be great, as Hyrule Castle deserves to become a proper dungeon with a fight to the death against Ganondorf as the cherry on top.
The Distant Past DLC free. Ruins of bird statues have been seen in Breath of the Wild since the reveal trailer back in 2014, but it was first in the game that we realized that these belonged to a long-forgotten barbarian-like tribe known as the Zonai. Makoto Yonezu explained the presence of the Zonai the following way.
As we were in the process of creating the cities and people of every region of Hyrule, we thought that if we showed fragments of a civilization that collapsed long ago, it would make the world feel more real. That's why we added Zonai relics throughout Hyrule. The ruins are primarily animal-themed, but with the history of the Triforce from an ancient perspective in mind. The designs are symbolic, using dragons, courage, owls, wisdom, and boars, power. And yes, their name is a pun. Zonai is a take on Nazo, a word meaning mystery in Japanese. Senior lead artist, landscape, Makoto Yonezu.
By the way, that was in Masterwork / creating a champion. There's much more from where that comes, as the Zonai and Hyrule's distant past are massive mysteries. Our fascination for this prehistoric period derives from the map of ruins from times unknown at the end of creating a champion. And in Breath of the Wild itself, the Zonai were referenced through impressive ruins scattered across Hyrule. And without a sequel, it would probably have ended on that. Just a big tease. Luckily for all of us, the Zonai, despite being cut from Breath of the Wild, were always planned, or it seems they were planned for DLC 3 until it was cancelled, which is good for us because now the tribe is getting the deserved spotlight when the last DLC now becomes a full worthy sequel. Guardian Link is Zonai Link?
One of the ways the Zonai are likely to impact Breath of the Wild 2 is actually from a gameplay perspective, specifically Link's green hand and the power of the spirits. But if Link's right hand becomes tied to this new power, would he then wield the Master Sword with his left hand? The question is interesting as in the process of creating Breath of the Wild, one of the visions for Link that the design and concept team came up with was the Guardian Link, with his face, right hand and right leg being mechanical. Now, it is possible that this concept ended up as the Sheikah ancient armor and ancient weapons, but the hand remains a mystery that is likely to be solved in Breath of the Wild 2. In some of the concept art, we see that the artist did play around with the idea of making Link's right arm unusable to wield the Master Sword, and in the first Breath of the Wild 2 reveal trailer, we see more than likely the same thing happening to Link, his right arm becoming a sort of power that will force him most likely to wield the fully powered Master Sword with his left hand, which actually should not be overlooked as Ganondorf/Ganon was always defeated by a left-handed Link. This was the case in Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Four Sword Adventures, A Link to the Past, Oracle of Ages, and Seasons. A Sword Link will once again be crucial, with this teased new Zonai power possibly replacing his right arm. We could also see something similar in the sequel as was envisioned in the concept art. Who knows, perhaps something with a time skip in the game, and we could even see this one-handed adult Link as depicted in another piece of concept art scrapped by the development team.
Musical instruments and gameplay. Music has always been key to the gameplay in Zelda, and some kind of musical instrument has appeared and been playable in most titles, mostly in the form of harps, ocarinas and flutes. And once we also had howling in Twilight Princess as part of the gameplay. Breath of the Wild, however, broke the musical tradition, and throughout the massive game there is not a single musical instrument used by Link. And then we mean none, which is kind of fitting when you think about how underused music was in Breath of the Wild. As the title suggests, this game was more focused on sounds of the wild instead of handing Link a musical instrument, or play a tune that would completely overshadow the silent organic sounds found throughout Hyrule. Nevertheless, this doesn't mean that it was always intended to be like this, as from the concept art for the game we can locate one example of Link in his final design, playing a harp remarkably similar to that of the goddess harp found in Skyward Sword to the amusement of a number of animals. And the fact that animals are attracted to Link's musical instrument stands in grand contrast to the purpose of wildlife in Breath of the Wild.
Oh, don't kill it. It's just finding its own... Oh, okay, it's on fire.
Where they were mostly a source of meat and for a select few, riding. In fact, the scene from the concept art reminds of the scene found in the animal village in Link's Awakening. Perhaps there's more to this than we think, and that Breath of the Wild 2 will bring back the goddess harp, which we know is connected to the goddess statues from the distant past, and thus Skyward Sword. Musical instruments are key and will add a whole new layer if this cut idea resurfaces in the sequel, and then specifically if it has a gameplay purpose.
Organic Guardians and New Monsters. The Legend of Zelda series has had its fair share of dreadful and terrifying organic or spiritual enemies. Like the Wall Masters or Floor Masters, Gibdos, Poes, Redeads, and the nightmare-inducing Dead Hand. How Ocarina of Time was rated E for everyone with all of these is beyond me. Still, despite how frightening these enemies are, they don't hold a candle compared to some of the organic newcomers that were planned for Breath of the Wild. In Breath of the Wild's Creating a Champion, we get to see specific concept art where we have a glimpse of how horrific and creepy they were going to be. There's a spider guardian, which ended up as the mobile guardian in Breath of the Wild, a giant enemy crab, and two more which are just indescribable. At one point, all of these dark organic designs became the mechanical Sheikah constructions. And hopefully Breath of the Wild 2 will take a step back from the overwhelming use of mechanical Sheikah technology and bring some of these unused designs back, or at least grant us some other similar nightmare fuel. Aims to be darker than Majora's Mask, with its apocalypse, ultra creepy enemies, Ikana Valley, and seeing characters have to come to terms with their own death. No doubt Breath of the Wild 2 will need enemy designs like these, both for its bosses and for regular enemies on the surface, and potentially the underworld of Hyrule. In other words, this example of cut organic enemy design could make its return in the form of new or returning dark enemies. And there you have it, Commonwealth Realms' 5 examples of cut content from Breath of the Wild that could be used in Breath of the Wild 2. For my selections, click the end card if you haven't watched them already.
As always, we would love to see your opinion on the matter in the comment section below, and also make sure to leave us a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe and press that shiny notification bell. We have started our push for 250,000 subscribers, and we need your help to get there as quickly as possible. So here is another reason to subscribe, as next time we and Link with Zelda are going deep under Hyrule. Now do be sure to check out Zeltik's video on the matter by clicking the end card. See you there.